Hey everyone, and welcome to another edition of Board Games Hitting My Table. So this is a series where I talk about all the non-new to me board games that I played during the first or second half of a month. So this being the second half of March 2022. So I haven't got a tremendous amount of games here, but I've been playing some games, and I've had some gaming evenings broken down into 2-player games, 3-player games, 4-player games, and even a 6-player game session. So let's get started with what I played at 2 players. So you can see here I've played another game of Miyabi, which I think this is really kind of become a bit of a cornerstone to my collection, really, when you want that pretty introductory level tile placement game with a real puzzly nature to it. But this one I think really does kind of go above and beyond a lot of other games from this kind of niche in the hobby, because there's a lot of games trying to fight for this space, but I think Miyabi pretty much does it better than anything else, because this one, not only do you have that polyomino style puzzle trying to put things in the right place, but you have a lot more restrictions in this game where you can only place certain symbols in certain spaces each round, and you're also trying to build them vertically as well as trying to cover up the spaces. So kind of understanding how you're going to get the most points out of things, whether to get a quick grab of points by placing these points down on the base level, or kind of invest in a bit of a foundation to build these tiles on higher levels. And I really love the balance of those two things, and with the addition of these different modules you can plug in to even increase the complexity and scoring of the game, I think this just is such a versatile title that I absolutely adore. And I think anybody who wants a family weight tile placement game, then do not look over Miyabi. It is fantastic. Next up, I played a 2-player game of Astral, which is actually the first time I played this game at 2 players, and I think it works just as well. I do think my favourite player count is with the 3, just to make that kind of competition for the points a bit stronger and a bit more interactive. But it still works perfectly fine mechanically. You know, this one is a pretty simple set collection game if you're not aware of it, and where you're trying to collect all these different types of cards. Not only you having all the different types, but also increasing the amount you have of a specific type, because depending on how or the order in which you collect these cards, you can potentially score massive multipliers if you get duplicates of those cards. Very simple game, but ultra clever. And again, this one fits a really nice niche of being accessible but still pretty thinky. And this one's going from strength to strength for me, and it works at any player count really. So versatile, and I really enjoy it. So that is Astral, still going strong. So the 3-player game session started with a game of Nova Luna. So this kind of fits a similar niche to Miyabi, but this one I do like the way that the puzzle of this is different, because I've never seen this puzzle used before, as you're trying to link up these different tiles, kind of tracing colours to activate these other tiles. And I love the racing scoring nature of this game, as you're basically trying to complete the objectives of these tiles. So you can see here, this 5 tile here needs to touch blue, 3 blue tiles. And once you do that, you're going to be placing one of these discs on there to show that that objective is complete, and you're trying to get rid of all your discs. But I love this kind of combination effect where if you place a tile down, it can activate a whole bunch of different ones, and you can end up placing a lot of tokens all in one single placement, which I think is great and ultra satisfying. This one, I introduced it to someone who's familiar with games like Patchwork and things, and he really enjoyed it and got high praise. So I think this one's doing really well, and I'm surprised, because normally Uwe Rosenberg games don't often blow me away, but I think this one might be becoming my favourite game of his period. So that is Nova Luna. Another 3-player game that we played was something a bit heavier, a bit more involved. This is Coco. This is the deluxe version. So this one, I consider this game pretty much like the perfect mid-weight Euro game. It's just quintessential in that respect. Has some area majority in it. It has some kind of resource management. It has some card kind of hand management as well. And all these things blend together so wonderfully. If you can't tell from the theme here or from the box, you're basically trying to collect these fabrics, trying to create these kind of lavish ball gowns and outfits for these different nobility, and send them off to these dance halls for area majorities. But the way you do that is by managing this hand of cards, and I love that part of the game. I think it's probably my favourite part of the game, and I think it's the strongest part of the game, as whenever you take an action, you kind of pair it with a card, and these cards will have 3 different kind of tiers on them, going from like apprentice all the way up to the masters. But the lower cards tend to have a better ability on them, but you can't go to certain spots on the board. So I just love the way that kind of balances out, and you have to manage your hand accordingly, making sure you have a good balance of all the different kind of categories. And the way that the game develops and you start unlocking more and more cards and adding them to your hand becomes really enjoyable. And some of the things the cards do is pretty interesting. So yeah, I really enjoyed this one. I'm really glad to go back to it because I hadn't played it in quite some time. I'm playing a 3-player game of it was nice because I think that's pretty much my sweet spot for these Euro games anyway. And considering this one has area majorities, I think that extra player rather than just the 2 just spices things up, and you get the most from area majority games that way. So yeah, love this one. Definitely got my Elite Shield last year, and it still holds on to that. I think it's a wonderful game, beautiful, but the gameplay itself is also terrific. So that is Rococo, had another successful game of that. And we also played some 4-player games. So let's go on to the 4-player games first. So we played another game of Garum. So this one, again, not many people know about this game. I've been kind of raving about it for the last year or so. Really did take me by surprise. It was a contender for my surprise of the year. I can't even remember if it won that award or not. But I think it's definitely a well-worthy contender for that. So this one is a really interesting tile placement, almost abstract game really. As each round you're placing one of these tiles into one of these bowls on the board. And each of these tiles is further divided up into 4 different sections. And you're basically trying to put your colour in rows and columns on this board here. And then you have the option to place your meeple on the edges of the board in order to claim that row or column to score kind of a sliding scale points category basically. But the idea is that if you don't reach a certain point on those sliding scale, you're going to score negative points. You've got to be very careful about how you place those, and these spaces get gobbled up really quickly. This is just a wonderful 4-player game. The 3-player works fine, but a 4-player is kind of like perfect really. And again, it flows so nicely. It's got a lot of decision space here for only a 30-minute game or so, and I think really is just a joy to play really, and I think more people should know about it because I've yet to have a single bad game of this one. That is Garum. We also played a 4-player game of Smartphone Incorporated. So this game, again, this one really did take me by surprise last year. I wasn't sure how I was going to feel going into it. I did end up really enjoying it, and this game was no different. I think this is a very smart design, no pun intended. I love this key mechanism of overlapping these different cardboard kind of tiles, which shows which actions you can take. Are you going to produce phones? Are you going to venture into new markets? Are you going to raise the price or lower the price in order to undercut your opponents and get your sales through faster? And all these things comes together in such a logical, smooth process. And I just like some of the way that this game plays out. It can be quite AP prone at times if you really do think about things too much, but I kind of just went with the flow. Did do very well, but I enjoyed the experience nonetheless. So I think this one is a really nice game, and I can see why it's received its praise. So that is Smartphone Inc. And I've also been playing another session of 6-player games. So quite nicely, I've been now having quite a few 6-player game sessions recently, and obviously that normally means that the party games come out, and that is the case, but we've also been playing some other stuff. We played a game of Push, which is probably my favourite Push Your Luck game. I think this was a bit of a miscall on my part. I hadn't actually ever played Push with 6 players, and I don't think it really does shine at that player count. It just takes too long for you to get back round to your turn, and it's kind of, you just don't get enough goes to actually do the main crux of the game. So I think 3 or 4 players is where this game really shines. But this is like a kind of a blackjack style game, but you can't have any duplicates or of colours or numbers on these 3 different columns. And then basically you can collect these cards, but every now and then you have to roll this die here. And if you roll that a certain colour, you're going to lose all your cards of a certain colour. But you can choose to bank them to keep them safe. So I think I did kind of misintroduce this to some people, and it didn't get the full potential that I think it deserves. But there's still time to rectify that. We've also been playing some classics or modern classics with Just One. Another game that always goes down a treat because it is so easy to learn. You don't really have to get too invested. You can just sit back and relax and do some simple word association. So that one went down well. We also played a game of Cockroach Poker. Now, I must admit, this one I don't really understand. I don't quite get it, if that makes sense. So this is like another bluffing style game. So you're trying to put cards in the front face of other people and claim it is a certain card, and then the other person kind of call your bluff on it or accept that card. But for me, I just don't really understand the decision in this one. It always seems just like a 50-50 choice. And also the scoring category of, or the scoring criteria of only one person loses, it just feels a bit deflating at the end. It doesn't really go anywhere. So that was Cockroach Poker. I've also revisited Illusion, which is like almost like a timeline variant, as you're playing all these cards with these different percentages of colours on them, and you're trying to put these colours in order of their kind of coverage on that card. So a really unique theme and a really unique concept. I like this one. I'm not blown away with it, but I used to have it in my collection. I don't have it anymore, but I still think it's something different, and I certainly wouldn't object to playing it, and it went down okay. We also played a game of Jamaica, which I hadn't played in quite some time, actually. So this one is almost a racing game, and it does have quite a strong element of racing, as you're sailing these pirate ships around the island of Jamaica. You can reach certain points on the board, which means you have to pay money or food to land there. You can fight other people if you share a spot with them by exchanging dice rolls, which are supposed to represent these cannon battles. And I think this is quite a nice family weight game. I think maybe 6 players was a little bit overkill. I think maybe 4 was the sweet spot for me. But I do quite like the way the game works. You basically roll a pair of dice, you put them on the board, and then you play a corresponding card which will have 2 different actions on them. Either move backwards, move forwards, collect food, collect cannons, this kind of thing. And depending which cards you have in your hand will correspond to those pip values on the dice. So it works quite nicely. But again, I think it's a little bit too long with 6 and a little bit too chaotic. But it was fine. We also played a session of some One Night Ultimate Werewolf games, which was kind of my introduction to the whole social deduction genre of games. And I think this game is so familiar for me that I kind of play this in my sleep already. It's enjoyable still. It has some kind of nostalgic value for our group because we played it so many times. But it's quick, it's snappy, it's punchy, and it creates some good fun moments. So that's all the games that I've been playing during the second half of the month. Got a quite a big variation as usual. Some very light games, party games, mid-weight games, and even the slightly more involved Euros like Rococo. And that's it really, so I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please hit like and subscribe to the channel and all the other good stuff. And for everyone else, I'll see you next time on Chairman of the Board. Bye.